I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli, he's on vacation. Andrew Kuo will never, ever take a vacation. He won't do it. You can't get him on vacation. Andrew Kuo, how are you, buddy?
I'm amazing.
Yes.
Feel incredible. Although, rest in peace, Huey, who passed away today. Rapper, famous for Pop, Lock, and Drop It. Did you see
No,
that
what
news?
happened? I didn't hear about that.
I believe he was murdered. Details to come. He was only 31, but that did not seem like a long time ago when he was in our brains and in these streets.
That was a great single. I love that song.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like I was watching Atlanta, the second season of Atlanta finally, which is fantastic. And they were like, oh, old school rap like D. Pharrell. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. That came out like over 10 years ago.
I gotta say, you're setting off the show by saying, I'm in a great mood, I'm vivacious, I'm ready to pod, and then also there's been a tragic murder of a beloved rap songs author. Really, I don't know if that just hits a little different.
Maybe it's because, and it is fucking tragic and heartbreaking, but it got me to listen to that song again and put me in such a great mood because that is such a banger and he was a great artist. And I hadn't thought about him in years. So maybe that's why it put me in a great mood. But you're right. It's a weird conflict of emotions.
Look, this is your own little medley of emotions. I just feel bad about the guy's death. Okay. So on a happier topic, because R.I.P., you were the subject of New York Magazine's Grub Street Diet. I read it earlier today. It's very long. There's a lot of mentions of mustard greens,
My
perhaps
favorite.
dumpling wrappers,
Yep.
probably some chips, some hot sauces. Recommend everyone read that. It's a real glimpse into the life of King Kuo.
Right.
How did that come about?
Kind of the internet. Chris Crowley is the editor of that column, and I've read that column for years, and we've been trying to do this, but I think we met each other on Twitter, and I had been a fan, and maybe I was retweeting it. I know he likes the Knicks, and it kind of all came together. So we were planning this for a long time, and finally it happened, unfortunately, during like the exhaustion period of COVID. But I was excited to do it, man. It sounds weird to say it was like an honor to do because, like, I don't know, having people pay attention to like the things that we all do is kind of like an odd feeling, but I really loved it.
I would say it's definitely an honor. You were being picked because there's an assumption that the way that you eat is interesting. Maybe it has to do with sinks, which got a reference in there, and I was like, a little sink treat for the Cookies listener.
I've been eating over the sink. Like, I really mean it, man. I just want it more. The other night, I was just eating. Oh, this is kind of, well, I had a leftover bowl of spaghetti from the afternoon, and I ate it over my sink while doing the dish it was in with my hands.
The depravity never stops in the Lower East Side.
It was like devouring my spaghetti young, my bucatini little ones.
Doing the Grub Street Diet, in terms of documenting the way that you eat, did it seem weird? Like what was the nomenclature? Were you just putting it down on your phone? And also, did you feel the need to change how you consumed in order to make the article more interesting?
totally self-conscious. It's like a lesson in being like, do what you do what you do. But then when you're writing it down, it's just like, well, that seems like I'm a depraved beast. But I just left everything in there. I had a Google Doc running, and I just carefully documented everything I was doing, including like drinking tons of water. But then it was great because I could talk to Chris about why I was drinking water and why I was talking about it, and the whole controversy with how many glasses of water you should be drinking, and Nestle and studies and all that stuff. But yeah, I feel like the best way to start eating better is just to keep a food diary, although keeping a food diary is really annoying. But you kind of hold up because you're like, wait a second, I just had spaghetti 2 hours ago. I do this thing where I watch food YouTubes and get hyped on eating, and I eat at like 2 a.m. to stay awake until 5. So if I don't eat, I usually run out of like juice by 3, and I have like a couple things to do, like work things to do, so I can't really get to bed before 5.
Was there anything that you wanted to eat but were too ashamed to eat because you had to honor the process of the Grub Street food diet?
Well, I told him I had kind of stopped eating meat. We've talked about this on Cookies. I had kind of stopped eating meat, and then the COVID hit, and it's tough, man. So I wanted to look forward to something. So I started eating a little too much meat again, and I noticed that in my diary. I'm like, this is a little too much. A little too many turkey sandwiches happening over at my little zone. But yeah, I noticed that was a little alarming.
But did you eyeball like a full tub of ice cream, and you're like, I either have to violate the conditions of this journalism, or I can't eat this bathtub full of Ben and Jerry's?
No, I didn't do it. But I think there's
Interesting.
I'm trying to think, like, there's...
Did you cheat? Be honest.
Yeah, did I lie? Were there lies?
You lied? Did you lie?
I did not, as far as I can think of, because I don't believe that Grub Street diet in particular is like one of a healthy person or one of someone who's bragging about eating only bad things, like in Flavor Town. I think it was right in the middle, and that's kind of how I eat, baby. But a lot of instant ramen. I'm a centrist eater.
The Tobias Harris of the Grub Street diet.
Like, if you want to eat half a bag of jalapeno kettle chips, do your thing, but there's a banana staring right at you.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah, man. What would your Grub Street diet look like?
You seem to eat a lot more different things than I do. But then again, I have never put pen to paper.
Right.
I don't know, but look, I've just been like making stews and throwing things onto a tray and roasting them. That's my depreciating level of interest in cooking over the last couple months. We've talked about that. Just
yes.
That it went from finding new recipes and doing interesting stuff to becoming a Joe Ingles style pantry chef. Like you don't have great skills, you don't have interesting ingredients, but like you can throw some shit together and it's fine.
There's a genius somewhere in there, though. Like Joe Ingles is not a genius when it comes to playing basketball.
But would you say he's a pantry chef?
I mean, I do think there's something extraordinary in pantry cooking. So yeah, he might just take what's available to him with dishing. He's just he sees the court like he sees his pantry. Possibilities.
Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to think. Who's a pantry chef in the NBA? Is it like a DJ Augustine who just kind of like screws around? Like, all right, I guess I'll do this. But you have to be, as you said, there's a brilliance to it. That's why I just thought of Ingles, because like,
is it peak?
He doesn't have great fresh greens. He's got some dried beans. He's got some stock. Oh, there's a couple of root vegetables. Now we got a stew going.
He's got some delicious Rayo's tomato sauce. I mean, wouldn't it the apex be Boris Diaw?
No, but he's no. Diaw's
too good. He has fresh
also
veggies.
He's also different than people think. Yeah. Diaw was a freak show athlete. that
He
just decided
was
he
in
didn't care about being a freak show athlete, that he could do it with his mind.
I love him so much.
Like people who scouted him and were on Phoenix teams, they're like, well, he could put down a cup of coffee and go up and just touch like the highest part on those vertical tests, and he was the fastest guy from one side of the court to the other, like when he wanted to.
And he was born with this physical genius because his mom was a all-time great international player.
Well, right, he had both kinds of genius. He was raised by the greatest French woman player in history, but also genetically was related to her as well.
Yeah, like, well, back to your diet. Before this coronavirus, this COVID thing hit, we'd see each other in person, and I noticed you ate so differently than I did, because you had good snacks on hand. You had always had nuts, almonds, and like exotic nuts, like like what do you call those? Not macadamias, but yeah, you had those on hand. You always had crackers and cheese.
I have abandoned crackers and cheese. Somewhere along the line, because they were coming in the way of actually eating like a human. I couldn't have them in the house.
I always loved that during the late cookies potting hours. You'd bust out some delicious salty crackers and
The good
delicious
old days,
cheeses.
man.
Yeah, man.
So another question. Oh, about your Grub Street diet, and it was about coffee before exercise.
Tea, hells yeah. Tea and chocolate, man.
But do you do coffee also?
I don't do coffee.
So, but caffeine before exercising.
Heavy. I chug an entire cup of iced PG Tips strong version coffee tea, and eat a little bit of chocolate, and then wait for that to hit for like 5 minutes, and then exercise. Performance enhancing drugs, man.
It's true, and I know there are NBA teams who got into the coffee as a pregame ritual. Portland Trailblazers, ironically. Portland. But it's ironic we're talking about caffeine in Portland.
Sleepy time, celestial seasonings bear over here.
Anyway, yes, the Blazers. They apparently drink a lot of coffee and became coffee snobs, according to an article that ran, I think, in 2019.
I love all food snobbery.
I never have been someone who drank coffee or indulged in caffeine before basketball, whether it was games or just pickup or any sort of on-court participation. And now I'm wondering if maybe I should.
I would recommend it, man. I didn't used to have to, but for the last good 10 years of exercising, I always make sure to get that blast of caffeine in my system. It helps, man, because my exercise routine is so painfully boring, not unlike my life, but like it just really helps get through it. And a lot of times I'll crave like chocolate or something sweet, and I'll just have it, just so I'm not like suffering through the 45 minutes of pedaling and weightlifting.
Apparently, in terms of coffee at least, the way it's digested and, I don't know, whatever physical systems deliver it into being a energy jolt, an hour is the optimal time. So if people are out there and interested in integrating coffee into their exercise schedule, plan an hour in advance.
Yeah, I also drink coffee through the exercising, but
so that might not actually do anything for you though, because it takes like half an hour for it to even start like kicking in. You're just mentally doing it.
Oh, I believe in placebo too, but I have to exercise now before like 9 p.m. Because if it's too late, you're up forever. But instead of Gatorade, should ballers be pounding Red Bulls?
They might.
I've seen a few, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I remember like growing up, a lot of my friends smoke weed before games, and
that can't be good.
That to me never seemed helpful. I mean, I tried it, and it never really made me a better player.
Listen, J.R. Smith has a championship, man.
There are certainly people who maybe benefit from smoking weed before a basketball game. Absolutely. If you have like a certain like style of nerves and weed calms you down and helps you see the floor better. It helps you focus. You know, people. It's not like you're just out there stoned off your fucking ass. It might be a different kind of high.
Quick, who are your stoniest players? Indiana Perkins.
He
Why
was
am
very
I?
stony.
Yeah, he was always droopy. Awesome player.
Was he a weed smoker?
I don't know, but he had a chill vibe to him.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I just think of guys with heavily lidded eyes. I'm like, T-Mac, so stony.
Right. Yeah. He napped all the time. He vibrates at such a low frequency. I'm like, so what? As he's 360 dunking on everybody alive. But I think of Jason Williams, man. Like
Which one?
the baller, white chocolate. He must be stony. All that creativity, all those weird, inspired passing lanes.
Yeah,
Maybe he
we're
was zooted.
like now ascribing physical traits to like the creativity of basketball, and then you can just be like, well, that's more of an LSD style player.
Ooh, I like this.
I mean,
I do this
Sam
with rap
Perkins
music.
is really more ketamine, if anything.
Is he? Like LeBron James is caffeinated, right? Like he is not stony. He's not ketamine. He's not like LSD. He's just caffeinated heavily.
It's kind of like Molly,
Ooh.
just like going off at Berghain.
Yo, like not to take an aside, is Germany, Berlin, over? I've read 2 different articles about how the nightlife is never going to come back like Berghain, and how the art scene there that was like blowing up maybe 15 years ago is totally abandoned and left in a shell of itself.
Was the suggestion that the art scene got priced out of Berlin?
It just maybe never got its sea legs. It was going to happen. And then Berlin got too expensive and the artists stopped going there. And
I think that probably happened. But also, one part of Berlin is that it's where you go to not get work done. Like, I'm going to go to Berlin and finish my novel. Like, well, then you won't finish your novel. I'm going to go there and do a big art project. No, you won't. Berlin is...
It's like sort of like Madison Square Garden if you're a basketball player.
I'm going to go there and bring the Knicks a championship. No, you won't.
I'm going to go there and be
Berlin
the
is-
superstar I was meant to be. No, you're not.
Berlin is it's a time suck. It's molasses. It's a tar pit. You go there and time slows down while it obviously rolls onward.
I really love it, but when I was there just for one time for a week or so, I did not do the nightlife thing. I did the food thing. You know, I woke up early and walked around and saw museums and ate food. So I didn't get a real glimpse into the culture of that zone, but I wish I did.
I don't think it's just the nightlife. I mean, I've been to Berghain and some of the other
not to
things
brag.
out there. They're cool. But that's not necessarily my reason for liking Berlin either. Mm-hmm. There's the same low frequency that you were describing that goes through that city. It's really leafy. It's very sparse in terms of population.
It's also
You
weighed
walk-
down by history a little bit.
There is that history there, but it's also just a very slow city. People don't pay much in rent. There isn't like a up and at 'em spirit to it. And I'm saying lifestyle is good there, but it doesn't lend itself to being a heavy achiever in Berlin. You know, you go there as an American, you don't have to learn German at all. You can just walk into stores and speak English. Like, it doesn't reward necessarily a sense of ambition in the same way that maybe a London or New York does.
I had a good friend who is in the art scene, and she's German, and she was like, I'm gonna go back and like start a gallery maybe, and there's a lot happening in Berlin. There's artists I love. It's gonna happen. It took her 8 months, and she was like, fuck that. I'm coming right back to New York. No one cares about anything. And this is her own experience, but she was just like, I can't even talk to somebody about like planning anything. It's like, it's just a different culture. She's like, the Berlin I thought was available to me doesn't really exist in that way. And I thought that was kind of surprising. but
I really like it. It's just a city for chillers.
that's all. That sounds amazing.
It is. This should not be interpreted as me knocking Berlin. I think Berlin's cool.
Yeah.
But it is not the same. It's not a place to go there and finish like your album.
Although,
It's a
like
place to go there and never finish your album.
like the lasting legacy of Berlin to me, if it is indeed turning into like a Bloomberg styled city,
No, it's not.
no. But like people are throwing out hot takes everywhere. So like, let's say this in some dystopian future, it turns into something like that. The thing I think about first in Berlin is compact records, right? Like all those techno records and the pop ambient series. Like the music from there has a lasting legacy that happened in the last 20 years.
Music, fashion, art. I mean, Berlin is obviously hyper relevant. I just mean as a place to go right now. I don't know. I know like areas like Mitte have gotten far more expensive than they were. Like there are certainly I guess some of the markings of like that Bloombergian, international city. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what it's like right now to travel either. I was thinking about this. Beyond the idea that Americans might just be barred from going places. Like, is it the best possible time to travel now? Just as, like, theoretically?
I was thinking about visiting my grandmother, like soon, because it might be the best time to travel.
Right? There's no tourists?
There's no tourists. The safety is at a peak, you'd assume. It's affordable. There's an inherent cloud of danger for sure. But also, like, I was thinking, like, if I don't see my grandmother soon, shout out to my grandma who's 104 years old.
Oh, wow.
Who is crushing it and still, like, is hungry and knows everybody's name who visits her. I just want to see her. And I was like, I just have to do it because this is going to go on until 2022, man.
But I'm also thinking of, like, New York City right now, for example. There's no tourists.
I know.
You go and walk around Soho on Spring Street, where it is typically throngs, not a few, throngs. On a June afternoon, you wouldn't be able to walk like that many people, and there's no one. And
it's a hater's dream.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to
Yeah.
walk, to not have tourists in New York. You're like, oh right, this city is amazing. Tourists are a problem. Like, no disrespect to people who visit other places. We're all tourists elsewhere. But when they start comprising large amounts of the people that you see and the people who are in restaurants, like, their difference is very noticeable right now.
Yeah, I like to drag my friends jokingly now who, like, fled New York City and are still gone and be like, what's going on over there? Like, I feel bad. I'm like, you bunch of tourists, man. You can't even get Carbone because they're open now, serving on the streets. Phase 2, and you're not even here to enjoy the spoils of living in New York City.
So there's been some shaming of outdoor dining, right? Haven't we seen that? I've seen a little bit on Twitter, and it falls into the same category as like park shaming, street beer shaming, fireworks shaming. Just
it's a shame game right now. COVID by nature has to be the shame game, but shaming is having a moment, man. Shame season.
A lot of narc culture.
Yeah, everywhere, and even calling narcs is narky. Where is narcception, man?
My narc culture is not a costume. Is narc culture a costume?
No, it's us, man. It's like, this is my face. It's like Donnie Darko. It's like, what's up with that face? We are by nature human beings, like tattlers. We're all D'Angelo Russell.
I still think it's getting worse.
Well, the internet makes it easy, right?
That's true, but there's something with COVID that really brought out the inner rat.
Well, yeah, because the consequence is death.
Yes, in a broader scheme, sort of.
But that doesn't motivate people. You're right.
Well, I think it's also that people's personal preferences have dovetailed with morality, right? Where if you didn't like a bunch of bros drinking on your street, you just were like, these guys suck. They're assholes. They're noisy. I don't like them. And now you're like, bad people. You don't care about death. You're selfish. You're privileged. You're entitled in a way that you weren't able to say before. You couldn't grouse about the inconveniences of living in a place like New York City without... You couldn't grouse about it while also having the benefit of morality and like the sword of righteousness.
Right. Like if you see a Brooklyn Nets fan carousing the neighborhood without a mask, you're like, oh, you're a bad person. Instead of just being a fan of a gentrifying basketball team.
And I've seen, the restaurants opened up for outdoor seating. Sidewalk seating, curb seating, street seating, garden seating, etc. And this has only been for a few days. And I've seen people on Twitter saying, don't go out and eat at these places. Don't do it. You want to know how to be good? Don't go to these restaurants. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure, because these restaurants are opening for a reason. And I would like to support these places that have been closed for months, as well as their staffers, and go there and eat outside and tip them and, be a part of getting the ball rolling to a degree.
I agree. It's so tough right now because nothing has changed with coronavirus.
Well, that's not true, though.
Well, the virus hasn't changed. Our perception of it and our knowledge of it has changed. It has been constant, right?
Well, that's kind of what I guess I'm getting at, is that New York City right now is not New York City from 2 months ago, although the virus is the same virus.
Right. And it gets stony, but it is what we think it is. And that's why we disagree so much, because it is a constant scientifically, but we are not scientific animals. And
I'm more saying its prominence, its grip on the population is mathematically far different. That doesn't mean it's a constant, but it is different now than it was when something like 10% to 20% of people in New York is walking around with it. Right now, it's testing at under 2% among people who are getting tests.
Yeah, so it's noisy.
Right now, it's a tiny percent of the population in New York, at least according to statistics, in comparison to where it was in, say, February, March.
Yeah, and it's such a booby prize, because that while the numbers have gone down, and your boy DeBlas is like
my guy,
your dude. It's like maybe we can ease into phase 2. Okay, right. That there's no price that was paid, but you see the numbers, like around 17,000 of us died. Right. Okay. It swept through. It swept through our population and did its thing, and now, right, the people who are were not susceptible to it, maybe can ease into phase 2, and
Well, what's the alternative here? That to me is the biggest question, right? Because while you're not doing shaming, you seem to fall more under the lines of people who are like, you really shouldn't drink in the street, really shouldn't, be in the parks like that, really shouldn't go and eat out at restaurants. Like, there's COVID, it's still out there. But, what is the solution other than waiting until there's a vaccine?
My same stance with the burger bubble. I'm like, I really want NBA games. I really want these restaurants to come back. But a lot of players are testing positive, and it's just what it is. I'm like, well, we can't have Christmas presents yet because it's November. It's Thanksgiving. It's not Christmas. I'm like, but I want my presents now. I'm like, we know you do, but you have to wait until Christmas. And, I don't think the burger bubble should come back in Orlando. I really, really want games. I really want, my restaurants to open. But there's a level of danger out there that I think I personally am very wary of.
Right. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to the heart of, is that if there is a level of danger out there, despite the fact that we're hitting these yardsticks that show that it is still declining, that it's not really, it is nowhere near the sort of infection rates that it had, not even close, that it's really just not around that much. And you're still like, we shouldn't do this. Like, what are you waiting for, I guess?
Now is not the time because there's people still coming into New York from other states, and I know your boy De Blas is trying to curb that, but we see in other states like Arizona and Florida, it was nothing. Now it's something, and then it'll keep on. We don't want to be DeSantis over here. We don't want to be like, aha, the numbers this week say this is this, and then 2 weeks from now being like, aha, I was right, I was wrong. That's not how this virus behaves. It's just like everyone's going to be a little right and everyone's going to be a little wrong, but until we get some real solutions, and we're just waiting now.
But that's what I'm saying here is that there is no vaccine. That it's an if. It's not even a when. So to say, as long as this exists somewhere in the world, we shouldn't go back to trying to have some sense of normalcy, even with safety precautions in place. To me, you're saying we should do social distancing and not open restaurants and not have people drinking on the street forever.
That's literally not what I said. I said
That's what you're
we
saying.
should be wary. We should be wary. I don't want NBA to dissolve. I don't want the league to dissolve.
Look, the NBA trying to open in Orlando is a totally different situation. That
Why?
They're trying to have people indoors doing athletic sports in a place that's being destroyed by COVID. New York City is not like that. Other cities around the world are opening back up in the way that New York City is because they have hit these kind of yardsticks. I'm not suggesting that we can go back to what we were doing before, because look, if COVID is out there, it's like someone peeing in the pool. Like, you're still in the pool.
Yep.
But my thing is to say, well, if people are getting torched by this in Arizona, we can't open restaurants here. Well, like, I don't think we can do that. I don't think we can say if other states did this horribly, then
That we'll
we
do it
should
better.
be then we should just be saying, don't leave your house, stay inside, hide if it's not here.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying let's use Arizona and Florida as data, and we should try to engage in our lives in a more social way now that we know information. Like we always say, there's no need to bleach down your groceries anymore. We found out it's an airborne thing, so it's masks and masks and masks. If we do that, we won't be in that questionable gray zone that we were in 3 months ago. But at the same time, I want to do it smart, and we should look at how it spiked in certain places as data, as a shooting chart, as Basketball Reference. Like, what are we looking at? And not just be like, sign Vin Baker to that contract. Be like, well, he has declined, but you're not buying him at his best, and we're not investing at our best. We shouldn't. We shouldn't invest in our most empathetic.
I guess I just don't really understand what the potential timeline would be if someone says, no, now is not the right time to have restaurants open for street seating. Like,
I think it is the right time.
Okay, all right. I'm talking about other people, not you specifically. I'm like,
Yeah.
What would be your timeline to approaching some sense of normalization, if not a vaccine? I'm like, where does that point begin? Because it sounds to me like that point doesn't exist for some people.
Yeah, and I believe in Fauci. I think he's a straight shooter, but December is the target. As a target, I think is realistic because that'll maybe mark a year, and they're expediting with some risk. But I think we're going to see something by 2021, and until then, and until we see what we get, we're just behaving worse now. Not New York City, but as a whole, we're arguing about these really ridiculous things right now, and our numbers don't look good globally, and I think it's because of a lot of things.
The numbers globally are pretty much fine. We've seen the curve flattened all over the place, except for in broken trash can countries like the United States, Russia, Brazil, and places that just are deeply poor, where the virus is starting to hit now, and we're just not getting any accurate testing numbers.
The delay seems to be longer. It seems to be longer than a couple weeks.
Yes. But, you compare us, we've all seen these graphs over the last couple of weeks.
We're all graph experts now.
compare, Europe to here, and it's absurd.
Yeah, we did a bad job, and we could still do a better one moving forward if we try. But it's our leadership. It's everyone's blaming like media, and I think 538 put out a bunch of data today being like, it's hazier than you think. We can't really blame it on like Sean Hannity or Fox News. There is a correlation, but they're producing those results with things they want to see. So it's a whole bunch of things, and we talked about this before, like the revolutionary aspect of this country kind of plays in here, and Boston Tea Party, the BMM, and the way like the hot takes, like people having revolutionary new thoughts is something we really treasure, and that really doesn't work when there's a virus that doesn't care what you think about The Last Dance.
I'm mostly thinking of New York City's trajectory and New York City's graph when you compare it to places in Europe, and it's pretty similar. Hit hard, shut down, fairly draconian, not so much here as in Europe, but similarly, and we saw the rates go down. Like that graph is familiar. And
but then
the rest
it kind
of
of comes
America,
up.
but in New York City, no.
It might though. Like today is not the end. It may look good now, but
I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying if New York City was an isolated state, if we were by ourselves, we would be like, yeah, we're following the same protocols as Europe. The only issue is that we are part of New York State. We're part of the Eastern Seaboard, and we're part of the United States of America.
Yeah, I think some of that's true. Some of it is, just New York City alone, the totals were like 17,000, which is like jaw-droppingly high compared to every European country. And an argument could be made like the way this virus behaves, it's like it turned over a lot of stones, and there are fewer stones to turn over, but they still exist. But 17,000 is breathtaking.
For sure. I'm more talking about just the parabola. I'm talking about the sine wave, whatever. I'm not saying it's the same. Obviously, New York got demolished.
Whew,
I'm more saying that. I just don't understand the people who are still like, don't do anything. Don't do anything. No. Stay inside. I'm like, look, at some point you have to start doing small things. We all agree you can't have shit inside right now, really. We all kind of agree with that. And I know they're going to try to do some barbershops and things, and I think it's a little dicey, but small amounts of people wearing masks inside, like, all right, we've been doing that in supermarkets, we've been doing that elsewhere, and rates are still going down. But overall, we all get it. You kind of have to be outside. You got to wear a mask when you're around. We're not riding public transportation much. I don't know. I feel like we kind of figured out how this works for a few months. And we'll see what happens as New York gets brutally hot. And all of a sudden, people aren't outside as much. And that's kind of what we saw happen in Florida. It got hot as shit in those places. And all of a sudden, the rates spiked because people didn't want to be outdoors. And that's about to hit in New York. We're going to have a heat wave over the next, week or so, let alone July, August. And when New York is too fucking hot to be outside in front of a bar with your friends, you're going to want to be in a room.
It's so funny how simple things in every part of life, like diet, exercise, the NBA, this coronavirus, how simple things are like so underrated. And I read that article being like, in defense of air conditioners, being like, turn those things on. Like, keep them on. If you don't have a fan, if you don't have circulation, turn on your air conditioner, because even that little bit of air circulation helps. And it's not recycling the same air. It's just like filtering it. It's just like whatever you can do.
But what about the joggers who aren't wearing masks and they're going down my street and they're coughing, and then the corona floats through the air, gets sucked into my air conditioner, then goes directly into me, enters my eye, and I embark upon a long battle with COVID.
Hey, there's always an outside chance that a jogger running by can cough and you can get it for sure,
I don't think there is, though.
We don't have to argue empiricism, but I think what's happening now is, and it definitely correlates with how we talk about the NBA, is like there's we talk about it now being like that doesn't happen, and scientists or GMs are like, okay, you can think what you want, we're still trying to figure this out. You guys don't argue to the point of like hurting each other, but you're gonna try to adapt on your own, but we have to figure out policy based off of what we know. And if someone's like, listen, it's impossible to get outside, I refuse to wear a mask outside, being like, okay, we don't think that's a right idea, you may be kind of right, but we cannot do that.
I'm not advocating for any particular kind of behavior. Clearly, wearing masks is enormously important. I'm only talking about what we have seen, and that's outdoors, wearing masks when you're around other people, trying to social distance. All those elements make it very, very, very difficult for COVID to pass between people. That's all I'm saying.
Would you, if you
And
rolled
it's
up
very
to,
easy when you're indoors.
if you rolled up to Carbone or like Il Sodi, who, restaurants you can't get into usually, and they're doing curbside seating, what if it was like a little crowded and it was like 3 feet instead of 6? Would you be comfortable eating and talking? Because you can't wear a mask while you eat. How many feet are you comfortable with? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
I mean, how many people are we talking about?
Let's say it was 20.
Well, how many people are you within 3 feet of? You can't
Let's
be
say
within 3
10.
feet of 20 people.
Let's
You
say
can't be
5. Let's say 4.
Within 3 feet of 4 people.
Say we're sitting at a table and people want this amazing food and are a little crowded and enjoying it and eating and getting drunk and laughing and arguing.
And you're and you're outdoors?
Yes.
Well, I don't know what the question is. Is the distance?
How would you be comfortable sitting next to somebody you didn't know eating at Il Sodi without a mask on?
3 feet? Like, basically, you're sharing a table with a stranger.
Yes, exactly.
If you're outdoors, I think it's okay. I would not be eager to do it, but I would not find it terrifying. But also, outdoor seating that people are using is further apart.
But let's say like on St. Mark's where people are having a block party, people were closer than 3 feet. I mean, there's deniers out there, right? There's people who are like, I don't believe this is a real thing. And we saw them through various shaming avenues. But I don't know. It's like...
well, look, I don't want to advocate for unsafe behavior. Me, personally, I'm not that scared of getting it outside.
Neither am I.
I wear a mask when I'm walking around the street,
Yeah.
even though that mask doesn't do shit to help me. Like when I'm wearing a bandana over my face, that doesn't do shit. I'm doing that because to make other people feel better, and potentially, if I did have it, to stop from spreading it. But me walking on the street in a mask, that's for other people. It's not like, yes, my bandana saved me from COVID.
So there's been people trying to even cause rifts within the mask community. Do you think there's truth in you're either a medical mask wearer or a style mask wearer? Like either you are wearing something you've made or has like a flair to it, or you're just wearing one of those like blue or like white masks. Do you think there's like a societal differentiation there?
I wear both, so I don't think of anything like that.
So maybe
I don't
not.
have like a N95.
I have one. They're so tight and uncomfortable and give me headaches, but that means they work well. They're so like snug. I wear the blue like surgical masks now.
Yeah, I'll wear those, but not always, especially if I'm like going somewhere where I know I'm not going to be wearing it routinely, and I don't want to be, if you're going to dinner, those are weird because like you don't want to always be like putting it behind your ears when like the waiter comes over.
Yeah.
Like having a bandana type thing that you can just kind of put over your face quickly is a little bit easier, or around your ears or around your neck.
My ears are that move is tough for me because I have glasses. It just gets all tangled up. I got to take off my glasses, but
yeah, I can't wear glasses and the ear masks at the same time. It ends up hurting my ears. There's like too much going on back there.
Are you gonna hit any of these hard to get into restaurants this weekend?
I was thinking about that. Again, as long as I think you're distant from people outside in a reasonable way, and the restaurant is seemingly excited about doing this sort of thing,
And
in order to survive, it does seem like an opportune time to go into a place that you just normally could never go because tourists have, filled up their reservation books for months in advance, or you could never just walk into. It's definitely kind of enticing. I don't know if it's the same product though.
I know, right? Isn't a restaurant the room, the ambiance, the service, the playlist, the way people are dressed? The idea of the restaurant to me, the old idea doesn't exist right now. So in a new way, yeah, I want to try like hard to get food, but the food turns out to me means less than I thought.
Yeah, I agree, right? Because if there's a restaurant that's known for having incredible food, then do you really want to eat it on a sidewalk? With trucks rumbling by and, pizza rats carrying their slices home.
Like a breeze. Like I have a favorite bowl and knife and fork in my house, and when I'm making something I especially am looking forward to, I put it in that bowl and eat it with that knife and fork because it's like a part of an experience. It's the right shape. I like the pattern on it. It makes me happy. And when you're eating this delicious like food, like let's say you got like a seafood tower from Balthazar, and it comes like in a very nice like cardboard container, it just hits different.
I agree. Even food that's really good, that carries in a way that is at least consistent with how it would taste when it was brought out to your table. There's certain things that just don't carry well at all. But even stuff that does carry well, it's just not the same to eat it out of a styrofoam container. So maybe eating outside is close enough at this point.
It's
like
nice.
I went to a friend's restaurant last night and was sitting along the street, and it felt weird to have waiters coming up wearing masks and gloves. It definitely felt a little gross and illicit. Like, what are we doing here in that way? Mm-hmm. But it was cool to have food that had been recently prepared and wasn't of your own hand.
Yeah, by masters with people not like you, not cupboard geniuses, maybe market geniuses.
I had really good fries. It had been months since I'd had really good fries. Like, I can't do this at home. I can't do really good fries, and they don't travel well.
I miss deep fried food, man. Someone wrote an article about this. Where are we gonna pee? Where are we gonna wash our hands? And like, let's say you have this delicious like pomme frite, right? And let's say you have 2 drinks because all these places make a lot of their money on selling drinks. So like, all right, I'm gonna have a 3rd drink. It's like, ooh, I really have to use the restroom, but where do you go?
I mean, everyone's just peeing outside. Like, what do you?
That's the answer, I guess.
What are you gonna do?
I know, right?
I mean, restaurants will let you go in to use the bathroom. I'm a little leery about that. When I went to one, I didn't go in there, but they were using a thermometer that they would like zap your forehead and to look at your temperature before letting you in, and you had to wear a mask. I mean, I guess in theory, there's not that much difference between going in to use a bathroom and like going into the supermarket, right? It's like cover your face, put down the toilet seat.
Yes.
Right. I don't know if there's a danger there that's different than going into a bodega, but it does feel weird.
I have a buddy that pre-COVID we went to movies and went to restaurants together, and a lot of times I would go into the bathroom after him and he would never flush. And then finally it took like 10 years for me to be like, dude, is this an environmental reason or some weird like pride or a fuck you? Is this punk? What is it? He's like, oh, I don't like to touch anything when I'm in the bathroom. So I just don't touch anything.
But we all learned when we were like 7 years old to use your foot.
He doesn't even, he's a germaphobe. So he's just like, I don't do anything. I just don't touch a single thing with my shoe, with anything. He's like, I don't know. It sounds weird. I just don't do it. I'm like, but then I have to do it. He's like, well, it sucks for you.
Well, he should be using the bottom of his foot. That's the answer.
Yeah. And now they have automated things, so it's different. But
That's true.
A lot of ethical restaurants, amazing restaurants, were opening up their bathrooms to protesters during when the protests, and they're still happening. protests are still happening all over New York City. They're just not getting covered as much. But, you know, there was a kind of like a break, like a weird kind of, we forgot about the dangers of COVID for a second because there was bigger things at hand, right?
I disagree. I think everyone at the protest was wearing masks for the most part that I saw. The only people who weren't were wearing cops. I'm sorry, were the cops who were not wearing masks outside.
But what
Cops
I'm saying is,
rarely wore them.
I agree with that. But what I'm saying is the restaurants were just like, yes, this is very important. You can eat our food. You can use our restrooms. There's a line inside. But this is like a very viscerally important thing to us. And this is a political statement too, right? It's restaurants declaring like, this is the side we stand on. Protesters can come in and use our place for help, you know? And I thought that was kind of cool, but...
Well, are you going to go do some curbside eating at restaurants that you couldn't normally get into?
I haven't seen a restaurant I've been getting takeout a lot. There's a lot. I'm not an environmentalist, but there's a lot of packaging that goes with takeout that kind of like is a lot.
Agree. I don't like takeout for multiple reasons. I don't like eating it at home. I don't like the waste that it generates. I don't like the way it travels most of the time. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm not suggesting that we should all get into like curbside dining all over the place. Like, yes, that's amazing. But I find it preferable to takeout, and I don't think it's that different in terms of danger or spread, because takeout, you're still going there and you're picking it up. They're still in the kitchen making it. There's still some interaction.
For sure. And a lot of these curbside restaurants are using like plastics and disposables, and this is really a difficult thing. I don't know if there's an answer, but you know, like my favorite restaurant currently is a place we go to all the time, Szechuan Mountain House, and I love their mapo tofu, but it's so drenched in red oil that they like triple pack it in plastic so it doesn't, you know, get everywhere when you travel with it. It's a lot of plastic, man. It's like...
Are they doing, well, yeah, their location on St. Mark's, not a great place for doing like alfresco dining.
No, it's only certain locations of restaurants that can do this. They are just doing takeout from their store, but I don't know what they're doing. I have not been out there in days. But
if you're like Bar PD, you're ready to go, right?
Yes. Balthazar can probably rock too.
Yeah, but Bar PD, they've got a ton outdoor seating right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
you see other restaurants with like patio furniture out front, like very bootleg, roping off the streets. Like do whatever you can do to get it open. Also, taking up a lot of valuable parking spots. So I do not see alternate side parking coming back anytime soon.
I want to shut down these streets, man, but I do feel bad for like people who need to park their cars, man.
I'm in favor of both.
Yeah, me too.
Like the idea of shutting down all the streets. I also have to park a car.
Yeah.
I can see both sides.
I mean, yes, I am a fan of getting into cabs and Ubers, and I'm not anti-car, but I don't know how to do this. There's like, New York City is going to look different, and it's already kind of like looking like something I recognize more. But my buddy made a really good observation. He was like, he's a photographer, and he was like, I have not seen downtown look like this since the mid 90s, where we're all hanging out, sure, and like conducting ourselves, but there's like boarded up establishments and things are closed. And
it's also boarded up in a way that is amazing. It's in a good way because there's no tourists. These stores are garbage. Who cares about them? They're like, fuck them. Yes. They're boarded up, and
not all stores are garbage. I love many stores that are so boarded.
I'm not just going on an anti-stores rant here.
Just so the
not all stores.
The reply guys don't come at you.
Not all stores. I'm saying the luxury stores in Soho, like, dude, fuck them. Whatever. Their big glass thing is now covered with plywood and art for Black Lives Matter, like portraits of George Floyd, and like it's so much better.
Oh,
Walk
I wasn't
around
even thinking about those. I was thinking about
Soho
like
looks
dollar stores.
Oh, I'm saying Soho looks incredible. There's no tourists. There's just art everywhere on all these boarded up stores. It looks amazing. It looks better than Soho has ever looked in the last 20 years, probably 30 years. It looks cool as shit.
I was thinking of
It's not,
other places.
It's not apocalyptic. It's not scary. It looks cool.
Yeah. I have not been to Soho in months.
That's what I'm saying. It looks totally different than you're thinking of.
But my neighborhood is a little sad. Like all the Chinatown dollar stores are still boarded up. All the supermarkets in Chinese say like, we're not going to open until it's safe. And it's all worn out now. It's not, those signs are all like rain damaged and streaky. I'm like, I see what my friend is saying for sure.
I would say the same thing about Chinatown. Chinatown they are not in a position to weather this well.
No. Abacus Bank, help. Like we need... Yeah.
They also don't have the space, as we're saying, to open up with curbside or have they don't have even the ecosystem for people hanging on the street. That's not what Chinatown has ever been about.
I know. Those are not clean streets either. I don't know, man.
But I agree. But as I was saying, take a walk through Soho. It is.
I might go. Yeah.
It's sick. I know that sounds weird, and obviously it's deeply unhealthy from an economic standpoint. But Soho is amazing right now.
It's just an accelerant for Kanye to get in those Gap stores, man. And give us that Matrix gear we've all been waiting for. Kanye's going to save the Gap. The Gap was filed for bankruptcy, and I've been on their website like a demon, like buying stuff for like $10. Everything's on like triple sale. But now Kanye, they signed a deal with him. I think it's a 5-year deal. This is like sports. It's a 5-year deal with an option for 10. And he's going for it. I am kind of fascinated by this, man. Does this register for you at all? Are you psyched?
When I think of the Gap, I think of its moment as sort of the paragon of yuppie Americana. And the Gap was in every mall. It's so tied to that era for me. And I think there is some nostalgia for like that sweatshirt with just big GAP in those, embroidered letters across it.
That Spike Jonze khaki vibe.
Yeah. So I have some affection for the Gap as a like vintage brand. And there have been times when I kind of thought those sweatshirts would come back. Like I've been on eBay maybe a couple of years ago, be like, what's up with those like old school Gap sweatshirts?
For sure,
They're kind of sick. And I mean, they're great. And I think that Kanye, could just bring out those kind of sweatshirts again, maybe in like different colors with the same Gap across the chest or something, and people would dig it. I'm also skeptical that Kanye is a stronger brand than the Gap right now. Mm-hmm. Not that the Gap is a good brand. They're bankrupt and they have nothing. But is Kanye that strong at this point in terms of being like a design guy? I don't know.
He generates quite a bit of money. I believe they put out...
Does.
I think the numbers are weird, but I think last year he generated like 1.4 billion. But the Gap, even struggling, generated like 4+, maybe 5 billion. But they have a different reach and different model. I think Kanye as a fashion person is a powerhouse, but it's interesting to see. I was thinking about this because Supreme put out those Ziploc bags. Obviously a drug joke, but they've been turning into like like a really fancy dollar shop. And are they going to grow with their audience? Or, I mean, Supreme's been around forever. Like, we are the first wave of Supreme fans. So, but their new audience, are they going to grow with them? And is Kanye going to grow with his audience who's kind of like getting into their 30s a little bit, like millennials? And the Gap is such an interesting move, because like everything you said is right. Like, it symbolizes something that's so antiquated and kind of on the tip of our memory, but hasn't really articulated itself viscerally. And to have Kanye take a swipe at that is pretty like exciting to me.
Maybe part of that is that if you are Gen X and older millennials, you remember Gap as having an identity that is kind of you have fond memories of the Gap as a brand.
It had
If you
Apple Power advertising.
If you're 20, you don't know what the Gap is.
Mm.
You have no idea. It wasn't even. I mean, you don't go to malls. I mean, I'm sure some do, but has the Gap been relevant at all to people who are like Zoomers?
Maybe not in the same way, and they don't really have a presence at thrift shops like other brands do. Like off the top of my head, like vintage polo is very popular, but vintage Gap is kind of niche, right? If it even exists. People really seek out vintage like Tommy Hilfiger, right?
Like a Calvin Klein.
Like the Gap never crossed over to hip hop that much, or
despite LL dropping those bars.
right. Yeah, so I'm interested to see, because I would not have guessed the Gap for Kanye, but that's kind of like all these weird thoughts is what makes it kind of intriguing to me, especially since Gap was rumored to close, and it doesn't look like they plan any of that. It looks like they're doubling down and use Chapter 11 as what it's made for, to prop itself up.
Kanye as a design marketing behemoth is interesting because he's kind of been canceled multiple times and sort of like wanders onward.
Yeah, like politically he has taken
his politics are absolute garbage. I mean, he's done
it doesn't align with our
obscene
politics
stuff. Yeah.
But it aligns with half of people's politics, or maybe I'm claiming 30% of people's politics.
I think 30%. Yeah. I mean, he wore a MAGA hat. Like, get out of here. It's ridiculous. But no one kind of takes him seriously enough for him to be actually canceled.
I don't take him seriously either. I take him very seriously when he tells us in a whole album, one of his best albums is like, oh no, not one of his best albums, like the Wyoming record, like he has bipolar disorder and he struggles with like articulating his thoughts, and sometimes they don't come out right. I went on the record on Twitter saying I think he's the best rapper of all time. I think he is, in a vacuum of his artwork, no one has done it better than him, to me personally. And maybe Outkast, maybe. But I think we give him a pass a little bit, and this is Vince Carter related, right? How do some people in our pop culture get the sympathy that we kind of, the forgiveness that we look for in ourselves, right? Like Vince Carter never won a championship. He never won MVP. He's known as maybe possibly even someone who didn't want it enough. Like literally he went to his graduation before Eastern Conference Finals game and was tired and sluggish and didn't make the finals, but he lost to the GOAT, Allen Iverson. Like Kanye West also has bristled against his fans, but you know, we've been talking about, it was the 10-year anniversary of Yeezus, and the reaction I saw from the hip hop gatekeepers are like, this album is not only great, it's underrated. We should revisit it right now.
Well, I think more than Vince, because Vince has been a star and he was exciting, but it wasn't the same as, to your point, Kanye, who was an iconic figure for a long period of time, who was known for being boisterous and loudmouthed and changing his opinion and being capricious and all these kind of traits that we associate with artistry.
Exactly.
And look, there's enough loyalty that some people still like Michael Jackson. They'd still put a Michael Jackson song on. And it was funny, I was at a protest and they had music and someone put on MJ and it like played for like 10 seconds and someone quickly cut it off. And I was like, oh, there's someone thought it was fine, and someone else like, no, you can't play a Michael Jackson song right now.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is there may be some people who are opposed to Kanye because of statements he's made and say, I don't fuck with him. Like, I don't listen to Kanye. I'm over that. Won't buy his albums, won't support him.
Definitely.
But there's still enough people who would say, yeah, it's okay. It's no big deal. And what his indiscretions are far less than what, say, Michael Jackson or Woody Allen have been accused of. Kanye has mostly been accused of being a jackass.
Or
Right,
hypocritical and maybe taking the side that his fans don't agree with. But hypocrisy is what they get at him for, right?
I don't even know if it's hypocrisy as much as just like being just being an idiot. Like, I know that's a very vague and childish way of putting it. He's just kind of been an idiot. I don't even know if it's hypocrisy.
Yeah, he has said things that don't hit right, and I think I'm not even talking about the MAGA thing. It's just like he is someone who is, as he self-describes, as someone with troubles and who's very complicated and suffers a little bit. And then it expresses itself in ways where he's like, that came out. My brain is, something's happening, you know?
But also, our Peter Luger theory, no one has liked Kanye's music in a while. We're here talking about Kanye, and we're talking about albums that came out 10 years ago.
Well, Beautiful
No.
Dark Twisted Fantasy, I think, was the last rejoicing we had of him, right? Which was after Yeezus, which came out 10 years ago.
Right. The stuff that he put out over the last couple of years, no one cared about. No one played those records. No one cared about his production. Like, Kanye as a musical entity is a celebrity, and he's well known, and people love him because of what he's put out over, well over almost 2 decades.
Yeah, incredible.
Incredible streak.
Yeah.
But no one has been feeling his beats. No one's been feeling his gospel album. Like, there was no acclaim. There was no hits.
Yeah.
No one fucked with it.
And even Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, like, you never heard it on the streets. It charted, and it's well regarded. I love it to death. But, like, it never made a radio hit where we sang it in the streets like Huey. But I think to your Peter Luger point, it seems like he doesn't care enough because he got so into his streetwear brand. It feels like that's where his love lies now, right? Like, he put so much effort. Like, we were at that season 2, I think, at MSG, and he had Young Thug as one of his models. It was a production, and I'm like, and that's where he debuted A Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but it felt like his focus was shifting to this enigma, to this fashion designer, to this this multifaceted kind of guy. He wanted to be respected as someone who could just do more than rap, because everyone's like, stick to sports, stick to rapping. You're not political. You're not a designer. And he talks about this to endless, breathless stuff. But
We've also seen his henchmen and his proteges kind of surpass him, at least within the fashion industry. Matt Williams from Ben Trill is now creative designer at Margiela.
But is that surpassing Kanye? That, to me, not yet.
Within that industry, he certainly has not surpassed him in terms of like being a monster,
relevant designer,
being a Goliath. But I'm saying,
but Virgil maybe
he's exactly. Virgil's at LV, and Matt Williams is at Margiela, and Heron's brand is doing well, and he'll probably get tabbed for that kind of creative director position at some point.
I hope so.
With like a reputable company.
Or older
and
company.
like, so his guys kind of did fulfill the promise that Kanye wanted. He wanted these kind of guys to go from streetwear or go from being outside the sort of gilded halls of the fashion industry to infiltrate. And they've been successful. And that was kind of what he wanted anyway. So I don't really know what his goal is within the fashion universe at this point, other than to like collect checks from Gap or collect checks from Adidas. Like, I don't know what his goal is anymore, because it was certainly different during that period you're talking about, when he wanted to be taken seriously by fashion. He wanted Kathy Horn to give him good write-ups.
But he still has a vision, right? Like, even the new Yeezys, like those ergonomic alien-looking slip-ons, like, he believes it. Like, this brand is still evolving and still exciting to me, and the Gap thing is just an example of that. I'm like, that is a cooler move than going with like LV or something bigger, right? And I think if you would have asked me like, who should Kanye go with, and you said The Gap, I'd be like, that's perfect, amazing. That's because there's so much work to be done there, and there's so much baggage, and the expectations kind of leave a blank slate.
Yeah, it's an interesting destination for him. But let's go back to Vince Carter for a second, because you obviously brought him up as he announced his retirement.
Yeah.
That the Hawks were not asked to play in the burger bubble, so he decided why belabor the point and try to come back whenever the next season, whenever that
Yeah,
happens.
exactly.
He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna pull the plug. Well, look, so long, quitter.
In the great tradition of Michael Jordan, he just quit on us.
Vince Carter, mission not accomplished.
Didn't want it enough, man. Does not want it every day. He takes days
Didn't
off.
want to stay and finish the job. You bailed on the NBA. No championships, no MVPs.
No finals MVPs, no defensive player of the years. Has a slam dunk title to his name.
Yeah, you and Desmond Mason, bro.
You and Nate Robinson, buddy. Nate has 2. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Yes, for sure.
How come he doesn't get the ire of ringmasters? How come people who count rings and value championships and go at LeBron James for not having the hardware of Michael Jordan, how come we don't have any of that same energy for VC?
I think VC might be one of the rare players that's properly rated. I don't think
this.
he's underrated in terms of how good he was early in his career.
So good.
But he's also played for a really long time and has been fine for the majority of that. Solid, useful. He kind of redefined himself as like a pretty good player by sticking around for so long past his peak.
Longevity award, yeah.
But that's a double-edged sword because those minutes count. All those minutes you stacked up being mediocre, coming off the bench. Now that's part of your legacy.
Tyson Chandler.
You know, you wanted a movie that ran for 3.5 hours. You got it, buddy.
Yeah.
And Allen Iverson, well, you know, his movie was an hour and a half. You wanted to be an opus, and you had a lot of dialogue. A lot of long scenes that could have used some editing, Vince.
The Godfather director's cut.
Like, this is the cost, right? You get to be up on the all-time scoring list. You get to have all these benchmarks because you just would not leave. You sat around and you played and you came off the bench and you were a role model and a
Lovable teammate, apparently.
yeah, you were a great dude. You made Trae Young pick up his jockstrap. You know, you were a important, meaningful vet, and you bounced around the league. Respect. But again, like, we can remember those minutes. They partially define you as much as being a dude who averaged 27 points a game, 5-5, won the dunk contest, and was one of the most explosive players we've ever seen. You are both of those things now.
Yeah. And maybe I want to leave the lens of the Hall of Fame because that's a cultural award. But maybe I want to reframe it as the GOAT, like ranking players, you know, and where Vince may fall. Because our perception of him seems to be all over the map. I think me and you agree that he's painfully underrated and overrated. But we're just hearing...
I'm saying properly rated.
Yeah, it falls in the middle, right? Like if you take the mean of both, maybe that's a roundabout way to say that. He's rated. He was very good. And do you think him demanding a trade out of Toronto kind of hurt him as a potential apex superstar?
For sure. And I think that lent itself to him being underrated because he was extremely good in Toronto. Extremely good.
Led the league in offensive BPM for 1 year.
Beast. Absolute beast. And when he went to Jersey, it was in some ways
Jersey.
viewed as the collapse of his stardom.
Yeah.
He was still a good dunker, still a good player, but he was now a malcontent. He
Yes.
didn't want it enough. He was like team cancer, and that clouded that entire like portion of his career. And by the time that was done, he was an old man.
Yep, and infamously, and he denies this now because he seems like a really amicable dude. But the shocks, his signature shoes, was rumored to have ruined his knees, and he wasn't quite the same post New Jersey, and he was a cerebral player enough. And my thought on his perception is it almost creeps onto dribble bias, where we can't really call him an anomaly because on TV he looks proportionately like someone even yourself maybe. In reality, he's like a very tall, very built man, probably, yes. But people don't have the thing where they have with LeBron, which is like, well, if I was that big, I would do the same thing. So they see his slam dunk competition and be like, someone who looks like that can do that. It's a Michael Jordan-esque, right? But I also think that prevents him from being an apex, a top player, which maybe he should be, because people are like, well, he reminds us of Jordan, and he reminds us of his cousin, who may be even better than him, Tracy McGrady, and that kind of negates the visual we see of him. He was just an athletic freak.
There's a lot of interesting parallels between him and Dirk in the way that their careers went different directions, because both of them were amazing scorers, great scorers, fantastic offensive players, and they did it so differently, right? Vince, as you said, apex athlete. To me, the greatest dunker of all time in games by like an echelon. That doesn't mean there are other great in-game dunkers, but to me, Vince, his blend of violence and acrobatics, the fact that he would come down the lane in the half court and just do a 360, rotating the wrong direction, like wild.
He was creative on the way to the rim.
And when you go through one of his highlight reels, it goes on for hundreds of dunks that are better than the dunks that anyone else has done like in their career. Not everyone, but there are like 200 crazy dunks, like an alley-oop with two hands that he just reverses. Just bonkers dunks. And in comparison to Dirk, who was not a great athlete and was viewed as soft and wasn't strong enough to defend, was a big guy who should have gotten his ass in the paint.
Fadeaway jumpers, yeah.
And did that. But then you look at sort of how their paths diverged, where Dirk stuck around and spent his whole time with one team, and they finally got good enough and they won a ring. Where Vince was also this wonderful offensive player, kind of succumbed to bouncing around. He went to Jersey. They never won. He got old. Like, they both played a really long time, but Dirk was on a retirement tour. He was lionized. Vince, what is he, a raptor? Is he a net? Is he a hawk? Is he
a maverick?
A maverick? A grizzly? You know, so I think it's kind of odd, because if he had stuck around and stayed in Toronto and was good there for another 5 years, and maybe they had kept Tracy McGrady, maybe they had figured things out and ended up winning a chip and having a great finals, we'd be viewing him in a totally different light. Because when you look at some of those years in Jersey, he was rocking.
Woo! His first year was incredible.
I mean, these teams in Jersey, they were mediocre. They were a 500 team with him and Jason Kidd. And you're like, wait, why were they so bad? They had Richard Jefferson. But you look at the team. They weren't that good of a team. Mm-hmm. But, like, Vince was sick. And, you know, I'm talking about, like, for example, like the 07 team. Vince was posting 25 points, 6 boards, and 5 assists. Like, he was beasting.
For the Swamp Dragons, yeah. I mean, New Jersey certainly didn't do him any favors, because it never really caught on as a focal point in the NBA. But, I mean, Jackie McMullen just came out with a quote criticizing fans who give LeBron credit for winning in different places. And her BMM point, which is probably related to Bob Cousy somehow, was it could possibly be harder to do it in one place because of rebuilding and sticking to it, and that's a skill too. That sounds very Bostonian, but while I disagree with that in my heart, that's how casual fans see it, right? And you're totally right. If he and T-Mac had stayed in Toronto, we would have been saying he's one of the greatest players ever, and T-Mac was his sidekick. It had to split because T-Mac became an Apex player, and so did Vince Carter. And I'm glad the shares split, right, in a stock kind of way. And we got two amazing stories out of these incredible guys.
But did we, though? Because these are two of the best players of their generation, and with them cleaved apart, T-Mac kind of had a tragic career in some ways, and so did Vince. If they were together, maybe that's the Eastern Conference Kobe and Shaq.
The tragedy you speak of is injury, so it's hard to say they wouldn't get injured in Toronto either. We'll never know. But I think I am glad we have Tracy McGrady as the alpha, because his bright, brief burn in Houston was some of the best basketball I've ever seen.
I don't think he would have been limited by being aside Vince for too long. He was just an undeniably great talent.
So good.
I always get a feeling of my rare moments of whist, which is I'm trying to defund,
Abolish.
are the what ifs for guys like T-Mac, because we hold people like Dirk or D Wade or Kobe in such esteem as winners because they have a championship. And we looked at T-Mac, who didn't get out of the first round for most of his career, as flawed because of it, or Chris Paul. And it's like the tumblers of fate just fall in place differently for different guys. And that's why I'm like, well, what if they hadn't left? What if T-Mac and Vince Carter had stayed together for 10 years? What if Anthony Hardaway never got injured, but what if Shaq had stayed? Like, what if those two guys went to the finals for 7 consecutive years? Like the history of the NBA and how we regard all these players is so tied to dumb luck or decisions that have a butterfly effect down the line.
Like, yeah, what if Luke Cornett stayed with Mitch Robinson?
Like, what if? What if that could be your Twin Towers for the next 25 years?
Yeah. And what you're getting at is the spice of life. I think the way I believe this too, I believe I'm going to win the lottery one day. I have not played the lottery in 8 years. But like when I do, I'm going to buy everyone whatever they want. Have I bought a ticket to make this possibility happen? No, but this is what floats me when I wake up and I haven't had my tea. And all these ideas is like, well, I have an opportunity to do this, and what if I do that? And I think what would have happened in the NBA is kind of 60% of this discussion, right?
Yeah, and there are so many moving pieces. Like, speaking of Anthony Hardaway and Vince Carter, they were both part of the deal for Chris Webber. Except that the Vince Carter pick was a 1998 pick, first round draft pick, that was involved in a trade that happened in 1993. Vince Carter and Anthony Hardaway were traded for Chris Webber, but half a decade apart. They were in the same deal.
Yeah. Talk about butterfly effect.
Right. So imagine if Orlando said, actually, we're just going to keep Chris Webber. So then Anthony Hardaway goes to Golden State. They hold on to that pick. It never gets moved to 3 other teams in the meantime. And then they, maybe Anthony Hardaway and Vince Carter are on the same team in Golden State.
Jesus. And remember, Vince Carter wasn't even the guy out of Carolina. It was Anton Jameson.
That was an awesome team.
That was an awesome team. And yeah, and I think this was truly the era of like the mid 90s when the NBA started to the early aughts, where like trades were especially egregious. Vince Carter was essentially dumped for like a bunch of dudes and 2 draft picks that ended up being Ronaldo Balkman and his Ronaldo Balkman 2. And it was the era of egregious front office decisions that we kind of let fly, but now we wouldn't anymore. And now that we're in the era of player empowerment, we see these front office flaws better. But you're right. Like, all these deals would go down, and we're talking about those three players you mentioned are like all-time great players, man.
You know, when you were going back to the Jackie McMullen point, not only is she being willfully deceptive about an era when players had really long contracts and there wasn't player mobility. You know, you can't compare the 90s till now because dudes would sign 15-year contracts, or they would sign ones that made them a free agent after 2 years. Like contracts were all over the place. So there's nothing inherently more valorous about winning with one team or multiple teams, because at this point, the players are all moving around and shifting. Who cares where the actual team is?
Yes. Positionless basketball has almost coincided with like positionless fandom. It's like, I follow LeBron James. I'm no Lakers fan at all. I kind of want him to win it all this year. You know, I want that discussion. But yeah, she's being willfully ignorant. Where's Miguel? I
don't think it's even ignorant as much as it is saying
deceptive. Right, my bad.
It's deceptive.
Yeah,
because when guys would sign 7-8 year deals and they weren't moving around in free agency, it was far easier to keep a team intact for long periods of time.
Yes. And we changed that because we evolved, because injuries would ruin franchises. And we evolved to a better way of doing this. Shorter contracts, more money, more player movement. This way you can correct, like, let's say Allen Houston was going to be as good as Reggie Miller, but he had an injury that prevented him from being even a good player, let alone a great player. So, and that handcuffed the Knicks and sent them into relegation. We've evolved from there. Back then,
I could be getting some of these numbers wrong. I'm more using them as vague reference points, but I believe Glenn Robinson signed a 10-year deal out of the draft.
Big dog.
I think Chris Webber signed like a 12-year deal out of the draft with some escape hatches. There was another one, like, what was Juwan Howard? People just signed 8-year deals, 10-year deals, 12-year deals. It was not the same.
Yeah, governors tried to trick players back then, being like, this is job security. And players wisened up in the last decade, being like, that is not job security. I am the security.
But also, it was the owners who wanted to have shorter contracts because, as you mentioned, they didn't want to get stuck with a guy who blew out a knee. Mm-hmm. And it was the owners who made all these deals. And they also didn't want a franchise to be able to load up an incredible contract and throw it at a player.
Right.
Because they wanted players to stay where they are.
Right.
But they misjudged this. They tried to have it both ways. You're going to stay where you are. We're going to give advantages to the team that already has you under contract. So I can't just look at a free agent on another team and say, all right, we really want this guy. 10 years, $200 million. Like, let's go. Like baseball does. NBA didn't want any part of that. But what they also did was create a situation where players need to get to their next deal. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, okay, cool, 4-year deal, that's the max, I'll take it, I'll move on. After that, I'll sign a bigger deal.
Yeah, T-Mac was a good example of that.
They made it advantageous for players to take shorter deals and to move. Mm-hmm. And then you have all the dynamics of sneaker contracts, states without income tax. So you've created a situation where it was inevitably going to lead to massive player movement.
Yep.
So, yeah, there's nothing easier or harder about winning a title with one team or multiple teams because we're in a different era of player mobility.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how things can go back. And this is vaguely attached to your point, but I kind of wanted to bring up Paul George and the way Vince Carter left because management wanted to rebuild. And he was like, I want to be a star. I'm in my prime. And there's rumors this week that Paul George had fled Indiana because Blake Griffith, I believe it was Indiana, and Blake Griffith had expressed his desire to play there, and the management said no, they didn't want to pay him.
I mean,
like, what could have happened, right?
Well, I'm guessing Indiana made the right decision. Indiana said, we don't want to give Blake Griffin this massive deal. Because when he signed it with the Clippers, everyone said, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, right. The player perception of another player versus the league perception.
Yeah, when everyone's like, oh, they lost him because they didn't get Blake. Like, we all agreed that contract that Blake re-signed to with the Clippers was a mistake, and they bailed on it within like a year.
Is he a better in-game dunker than Vince?
I say no, but he was obviously apex.
Do you value...
Did not have the beauty,
This
power, the humiliation factor. Yeah. He also threw in too many dunks. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I
10
agree.
of his like best dunks ever are him just kind of throwing the ball into the basket.
Do you value
Just
violence
a
or
disgrace.
artistry?
Both, and that's why Vince is the man.
Vince he leaned artistic though. Like he really shined in a breakaway. I think Blake, I loved him so much because he met people at the rim. Meet me at the rim, Ben.
Dude, you got to go back and refresh yourself with Vince, because that dude was...
No, he's awesome. He's number one. But I'm saying we got to if he's number one, we got to frame it.
Vince was so violent. They are so violent.
Yo, he made Frederick Weiss famous. It wasn't Ron Artest.
I don't even love that dunk.
Yeah, he didn't quite clear him, but that was an amazing dunk. What's not to like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like if you watch like 10 minutes of his highlights, I prefer 100 dunks to that one. It was just crazy because the guy was huge.
I hate to do this to you. Kobe?
Nah, good though. Good.
Yeah, good.
I don't even know if he's apex, but he's good.
Can I just throw some names at you?
Yes.
Sean Kemp, the Rain Man.
Apex.
Jason Richardson.
Incredible dunker, but I don't know that he has the in-game arsenal. Certainly acrobatic, crazy ups, dunk contest, fantastic. Would do a 360 on a break and get blocked by LeBron.
Dominique Wilkins.
Apex.
Last one. Weird. Zach LaVine?
I think he's a dunk contest guy, right?
He has some in-game dunks, like not even close. But I wanted to bring like a contemporary in here because I feel like the dunk was so 90s and 80s. Like,
well, what about Zion?
We don't know yet, but violent. I like it.
Did Zion have a great dunk in the NBA this year? He kind of didn't, right?
He's had
which is nuts.
In that pregame, he stole the ball against Kevin Knox, Knicks legend Kevin Knox, and dunked it with two hands, and everyone's like, oh my God. I'm like, that wasn't it. I mean, has he done a 360 yet? Maybe he has.
He might have. I mean, Zion is one of the best in-game dunkers of all time in college. He has the ability.
Insane.
But I almost don't feel like... I'm wondering if the way that teams play offense and defense in this era kind of limit the opportunities for crazy dunks.
I think that's definitely true. The way defenses are set up, the way offenses are, the rotation of the ball with a positionless basketball, for sure.
And also look at a team like Milwaukee who just packs the paint. You can't really dunk on Milwaukee. They drop back in transition, so you don't get guys sort of streaking out on the wings, flying towards the basket. Mm-hmm. They put everyone in the paint to surrender threes. Like, you're just not going to get a chance that frequently to just bang all over that team. Granted, like, you still get guys who get dunked on a lot. Like your boy,
Kevin Knox.
No, definitely not.
Frank
no,
Ntilikina.
Your boy who was on Boston, now he's on the Suns, Australian.
Aaron Baines.
Baines just like eats a dunk to the face once per game.
I very much like him. Not only is he an ethical king on Twitter, but he also gets dunked on a lot because he tries. Not to say trying is valuable to me.
Wow. Whoa. Rewarder of wanting it.
Or selective bias because he also alters a lot of shots that people miss, and we never see those highlights. Let's see the steal in The Last Dance, the Horace Grant steal. Oh, well, we'll just erase that from history.
Maybe this is just a generational remembering of all these dunks that sort of become like of the past. There was many that were spread over like 2 decades versus now. But I just don't think There's as many awesome in-game dunks, but again, this could just be like era bias.
I also think you have a point in that no one really wants to do the slam dunk contest because Vince Carter ended it. You know, his gesture, like, it's over. He wasn't talking about that competition. He was talking about the dunk contest in general. He ended that because he, in my opinion, performed like no other person, and no one wants to touch that. And the failure is like Aaron Bainesing yourself, right? So I think the culture of dunking, that was the apex of it, and we're now on the flattened curve of the culture of dunking.
Well, your favorite dunk of all time was Blake Griffin over the Kia.
I love that thing. It was a car in front of him, man. It was
a Kia, awooga.
Yeah, man. I revisited a lot of dunk contests when people were debating Dominique versus Jordan. And there are some very underwhelming contests. And the ones we got with Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine and all those new guys are pretty incredible still. But Vince was the first to do it. So he rewrote it, and we kind of copy him now. There's like who was that white dude who was jumping past the rim on YouTube and like throwing it over his shoulder? No look. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah. Now you've got like the professional dunkers.
But why can't that be in the dunk contest? Like, shouldn't someone have done that dunk?
Yeah, I don't really know. They might also be so difficult to do that you can't really do them live.
Yeah, and
like you might have to try them over and over and over and over, and then you finally get it, and that doesn't really work in terms of showmanship.
I also hate conversations about dunks as we're having one. Like, there's certain podcasts that just go over the best dunks. To me, it sucks. It's worse than food potting, which we also did. But, like, it's hard to describe because, like, I want to see it. It's visceral. And to talk about it, we need to frame it as, like, kind of an idea. And that's really difficult.
My only agenda is that dunks are better than threes.
They're more valuable.
They're more valuable, and they're cooler, and they're more moral.
I love the optics of a three, though. I love that ball in the air and everyone looking at it. I think it's a beautiful thing, man.
It's no jam.
I love a jam, but like, I grew up too. I used to eat SpaghettiOs. Do I still eat SpaghettiOs? Still delicious, I bet. But
look, dunks are so cool. They have a dunk contest. If threes were cool, they would have a three contest.
They don't have a three contest?
I'm joking.
But isn't the 3-point contest more fun?
No.
I think it is.
I think they're both bad now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
I think there was a moment where like, oh, the threes are kind of cooler. And like, no, it's actually not. It's actually very boring. It just has more of a contest vibe where it's timed and like math and numbers. It's like floor is the lava, but if we're shooting threes.
And we're paying attention to the wrong thing, right? Like everyone's like, this is an active skill. I'm like, it's like more of a cultural statement. But I kind of wanted to get to this. Like while we're going through like our downtime, let's say an all-star break or COVID where the games aren't happening, there's like Daryl Morey's making moves. Is there profiteering off of this time of struggle? Like are smart GMs like creating still?
Well, yeah, there's that. I have not read the book because I don't read books. Like, it's ridiculous. The one that's called like Unfragile. Mm-hmm. You familiar with that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I have not read it. But the concept is that there's no linguistic opposite of fragile. And their argument is
not
that
tough.
strong and tough are not the same as not being fragile. Mm-hmm. Again, this is a rhetorical thing. Mm-hmm. So the idea of I guess actually it's called anti-fragile or anti-fragility.
Unfragile.
Not to be confused with white fragility.
Fragile.
So the idea is that in times of stress, there are people, ideas, institutions, companies, etc., that break, and there are other ones that are anti-fragile, which benefit from those moments. So this is a classic example of that. So you would say it's not necessarily that you inherently would benefit from this particular cataclysm, but you would benefit from any cataclysm because you're thinking of things differently. And that's why I thought Daryl Morey's 2-year signing of David Nwaba, who I believe was cut from the Nets after an Achilles injury, was interesting because he's not going to play this year, I don't think. So what is Morey speculating? That the league's not going to come back at all? And that he will have Nwaba for 2 years? Or is he hedging his bets? You're not going to play this year, but I'll get you on a more or less minimum contract for the following season, which may not happen until 2022. We don't even know. Mm-hmm. But that to me strikes a balance of that anti-fragility. Mm-hmm. How do I do things that benefit my team when other teams are doing nothing?
Right. This is a lot of what people do on the stock market, and there's a show on Showtime called Billions, which is basically this idea where the main character from Axe Capital, which is hilarious, profiteers off of 9/11 and creates wealth that he's still managing, but possibly illegally and morally bankrupt. And if I was Daryl Morey, he's not morally bankrupt at all. I think you keep on doing what you do. And what Daryl Morey did with David Nwaba was interesting because, to your point, not only is he preparing for the future, he's kind of giving us a glimpse into what the NBA or what he might think the future looks like. And David Nwaba is probably not going to be a game changer, but the fact that Morey signed him means that Morey is thinking in terms of the future moving forward, and many smart people do this.
I thought the Sixers should have signed him. I was disappointed that they didn't.
I want to see his charts. Like, is he really hurt? Because he was a good defender. He was like PJ Tucker without the three, right? Or maybe he did have a three, but when the Bulls signed him, I liked him.
He was a spotty shooter when he was with the Bulls initially, also with the Cavs. He shot well on the Nets and looked like he was going to become an excellent player because he can really defend. But then I believe it was an Achilles injury that just ended him for the year.
Yeah. I mean,
Morey did this before, though, right? When, not this CBA, but the one previously, he kind of invented, the Rockets at least, him and Hinkie and whoever was, behind the scenes, they invented the poison pill contract. No one else saw that. Mm-hmm. They went and looked at the CBA and said, where are the loopholes here?
Yeah,
what is this not paying attention to? What can we squeeze out of this that other teams are not anticipating? And no one else thought of it. And they went and they got Omar Asik and Jeremy Lin using these contracts that were designed to make the team of which that player was part of eat an enormous amount of money over on their salary cap at the end of that contract. And both the Knicks and the Bulls let the player go because they did not want to be responsible for having a massive $15 million cap hit for a reasonably pretty good player down the line.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the game, right? I remember this clear example. I think this is the NADA tournament. Shout out to our buddies Mills and Al, but they threw a tournament, and I think the night before you put together, or the week before you put together a cookies team, and we went over the rules, and we were both like, no shot clock. You're going to win this, right? And like, you ended up winning it. Shouts to you. You have that trophy hanging in your house or sitting in your house.
That colorful basketball.
Yeah. But I think that everybody should be thinking this way. And this is you bring up dunks being valuable. Everyone's like, of course they're valuable. They go in. I'm like, yeah, but people should concentrate on dunking then, like Ben Simmons. He's an evolution because he was like, oh, this is something that's more valuable than what I can do otherwise.
And a lot of people are saying he's a top 3 player.
I think the interns have turned the tide, and most of the internet says now that Ben Simmons is a top 3 player.
Ben Simmons, top 3. Incredible.
Why is Daryl Morey the only one moving? Are there other moves? I mean, okay, there's bigger things at hand. Like, players are getting sick. Like, the Kings are all sick. The big 3 on the Kings are ill. We have a lot to worry about in terms of our basketball community, but how come more teams haven't been able to do what Daryl Morey's been doing?
I think everyone is a bit paralyzed, and we sort of saw a few transactions kind of pop up over the last week or so, And look, I think Morey is the guy who's generally at the vanguard of those ideas. When you look at a team like the Sixers, whose front office is a bunch of suits, guys who aren't basketball dudes, they're business guys. In the business world, they might think in those terms, but they can't see it in basketball. So they're responsive. They don't learn from other people's moves. They just kind of plug along. They can only learn from their own mistakes because they don't see these bleeding edges. But Morey does. Morey thinks like that. The Knicks don't think like that.
World Wide West, though, is he making some calls?
I don't know what this clout demon front office is supposed to do.
Use their clout, man.
Is it just dedicated to trying to lure a big name free agent? Is that their entire philosophy going forward? I'm interested in seeing the Knicks normalize, but it's a bunch of clout demons and meat shields.
Listen, deals aren't done in front offices anymore. They're done in phase 2, sidewalk dining, and World Wide West is dining up Giannis Antetokounmpo as we speak.
I don't even know what World Wide West does. That's always been his whole mystique, though, right?
Yes, and from what other players have been saying about that move to the Knicks, they're just like, oh, we love him, and that's huge. And I'm like, this is something I haven't heard before. Like, maybe it is real.
I don't know. They're trying to do what the Lakers did.
The Lakers, that move, Pelinka to that front office, did not help them.
No, not at all.
LeBron went on his own accord. And then I think we may have seen the last game Anthony Davis plays as a Laker, which is
future Nick
Anthony Davis. But like, that was a bad trade for them. And, donuts taste great when you have them, when you take the first few bites. But on your fifth donut is where Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram could have carried you through to dinner.
I just think they gave up too much.
Too much.
And they kept the wrong guys and gave up the wrong guys. Anthony Davis is great. If you're his representation and you're Rich Paul and you're with LeBron, you know if he's going to stay or not.
Right. True.
Like when you're like, he could leave. He's not leaving.
That could be true.
He's not leaving LeBron. He's not leaving Rich Paul. Like they sat around and talked about this.
What if they pulled a Kawhi and both of them were like, let's go somewhere else after this? Because does LeBron have one more year or does he have an opt-out?
I forget exactly. But he signed a 4-year deal, right?
Yeah, I forget what his options were.
I don't even think he has his typical opt-outs.
Oh yeah, he just re-upped maybe.
No, he had all those opt-outs after 1 year in Cleveland where he just kept sticking those there. But I think he signed a straight-up 4-year deal in the Lakers. Because remember, there was a point where people were saying, they should trade him after his first year. So he's got 2 more years after this.
Right. I mean, I don't know how transactions are done these days. And the Knicks and Lakers, not surprisingly, are the ones who are like clout demons who are just like, our buddy, I hang out with these players, so I know what they're thinking. Whereas Daryl Morey has to take a different approach, or even Masai Ujiri has to take a different approach.
Well, when we're looking at the league's current restart, what your team does might be based also on what you believe is going to happen and what your ownership wants to happen. Mm-hmm. Because, look, I've been saying this for weeks, and I'm probably wrong, but this strikes me as a game of chicken. It's the owners pretending that they want this to occur.
Oh, so you mean the burger bubble?
Bail on it.
Yeah.
The burger, the burger bubble. It just strikes me as totally phony. Like, will they go through it if push comes to shove? Sure, but that's what they're doing. They're playing chicken. Will these players actually go down to the militarized burger bubble and play under these conditions? And if they will, okay, cool. They're going to do it. And if they pull the plug on it, also cool. We can saddle them with this loss and then try to tear up the CBA. To me, it's just a game of chicken.
These are leverage plays.
Yeah, I don't think the NBA actually wants this to occur at all. But they're willing to try it because there's money in it. They're also willing to pressure the players into doing it with the players likely saying, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like even yesterday when the NBA is like, yeah, we're going to have law enforcement down there to enforce the burger bubble. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's going to really raise the, elevate the message of the nationwide protest by having a bunch of cops protecting the NBA players in the burger bowl.
His job, by definition, is being an apex meat shield. So he is just speaking through. He's like a middleman to the owners. And it's no surprise that the owners have these thoughts if you just go down the list, right?
It's 30 billionaires wanting guys to go down into the burger bubble. Like, no shit they're trying to use this as a negotiating tactic. No shit it's chicken. No shit Adam Silver is out there doing his mealy-mouthed plea for, like, the platform of social change while saying we're going to have cops everywhere down there. Like, get out of here. It's what 30 billionaires want. And as you said, it's up to Adam Silver to polish that turd and make it something that doesn't look like an obscenity.
Yeah. I think we can't do it. And if they do it, it's like, buckle up, man. Because, we've heard Buddy Hield is tested positive, Alex Len, Jokic, your boy Jabari Parker. It's a lot. It's already happening. So worst case scenario is they start testing and people come up positive. They have not even started that and people are coming up positive. And there's rumors of a lot more, but privacy is a thing. And
you're going to have guys bailing, like, your boy Avery Bradley. He's not going to play. Your dude Bertans, he's not playing.
I love
not
Bertans.
to mention your guy Aldridge, your ace. One of the Bogdans.
I love the Bogdans, man. The Bogdanovi.
I mean, peak pantry chef Joe Ingles. They're all just having surgery and bailing.
When they said cops are going to be in the burger bubble, did they mean Joe Ingles? Are the Jazz invited? Sorry.
But this was their reading of the situation. We're going to announce that they'll be protected by cops. Like, very cool.
They are just throwing darts at a board because they know that some of their fan base are pro cops, which is just America. I can't even get started with that. But like,
that just struck me as another, like, we're playing chicken and there's going to be cops everywhere. What do you think about that? You want to come to the Burger Bowl? Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. You don't get to wear shoes.
But
what else?
But like, we can't be naive about this because Silver is talking for owners and owners are talking for their lawyers. So this is all legal mumbo jumbo,
yes.
Right?
I 100% agree. I think the entire thing is a legal gambit.
Yeah. They're saying these things not because they believe in them. It's because their lawyers told them to say it.
Yes. A risk-averse company like the NBA is not eager to try a burger bowl. They can't do it. They can't do a burger bubble. These are a bunch of dudes with MBAs. These are not medical professionals.
Yes.
They can't do anything.
They don't have degrees in the humanities, man.
They're guys who went to like Fordham.
Respect to Fordham, man.
Respect to Fordham.
I had a lot of friends, ex-skinhead friends who went to Fordham who changed.
And now they all work for the NBA.
Yeah, straight-edge skins who realized that might not be a good idea, and that transformation happened between the ages of like 15 and 16. A lot happens, man.
Yeah, they all went to Fordham. Some went to Fordham Prep, but they mostly went to Fordham. Lived in Riverdale.
For sure. Those are my dudes.
And now they're trying to make a burger bubble.
Man, I mean, the burger bubble's weird because we all want life to get back to normal, and we just cannot. But like, this is phase 2, right?
Phase 2 is eating a burger outside. Phase 2 is not a burger bubble.
Isn't a burger bubble safer than a non-burger bubble?
Definitely not.
Just a burger world.
An alfresco burger? Safe. A burger bubble? Terrifying.
People outside.
It's not even a true burger bubble.
It's not a bubble. It's just a burger world.
It's just a burger.
It's the world is the bubble. What's a burger bowl trophy look like? Is it like a bronzed burger? Is it a bigger burger than an actual burger?
Oh, it's a huge burger.
Quick. In-N-Out or Shake Shack?
Never had In-N-Out.
Wait, how? How is that possible?
I'm not really a big burger guy. I don't care about your burger world.
But you've had Shake Shack, right?
Yeah, so Shake Shack would be my answer,
But what prevents? I mean, proximity. But you've been to LA a bunch.
yeah, I just never went to In-N-Out.
What situation brought you to Shake Shack?
The fact there was one like down the street where I live.
Someone had a burger craving. It sounds like.
Only went once.
Which
I
one?
mean, I've had Shake Shack other times, like in the airport. Come on, what is that? LaGuardia Terminal 4?
Yeah, that flights to LA. Did you have their breakfast sandwich? I
Yeah,
heard they're-
delicious.
Yeah, I want one, man. I usually take the shred eye.
Yeah, a bacon, egg, and cheese bubble.
Oh, it's that meat shield for the bacon, egg, and cheese bubble. Those bacon, egg, and cheese bubble lawyers, man.
Daring every bodega to enter their bacon, egg, and cheese bubble.
Those chopped cheese lawyers. Cookies.
Cookies.